Hey, and welcome to a special episode of the Guide to Freedom Show. So, in this part, in this little kind of special thing, I'm going to be actually reviewing the movie Spider-Man No Way Home. So, I got to forewarn you right now that there will be spoilers in this episode because there's so much to talk about that I can't talk about it without mentioning things about the movie that are spoilers. So, as y'all was wondering right now, you got about 5 seconds to leave, or otherwise, it's on you if you get spoiled, pretty much. So 5 seconds starting now. Alrighty, so I hope everyone's gone. Unless you don't care about spoilers, and welcome. Anyways, so Spider-Man No Way Home pretty much begins, like, right where Far From Home ends, which is when, if you go back to Far From Home, Mysterio, who died just a little bit ago in the movie, not only framed Spider-Man for murdering him, but also revealed his identity. And pretty much the first part of the movie is essentially just kind of his life just going to shambles. Like, pretty much he has some legal troubles. That does get solved. But then his life in general will just be followed by the press. Just goes complete and utter chaos to the point where him, MJ, and Ned can't even get into college because of this whole thing. So, in order to fix this, what Peter does, he goes to Doctor Strange. First off, he wants to ask him to turn back time to the point to kind of go back in time to stop Mysterio from doing that. But, of course, Doctor Strange doesn't have the time stone anymore. And so what he does is basically cast a spell that pretty much makes everyone forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And then, during the process of the spell, which is on the trailer, Peter starts kind of messing with the spell, and then just goes and the spell gets messed up, and then just pretty much rips apart the multiverse. And so then we have pretty much the main point of the movie where so we have a bunch of villains from different universes come along. Like, you have Dr. Octopus, you got the Green Goblin, you have Electro, the Lizard, and also Sandman, who's not really a villain too much. I mean, he does become sort of a villain, but he has different intentions than them. But I'll get to that in just a little bit. But I know a lot of you are probably wondering, or probably hoping me to get to the actual point, the crux of this movie. So, a lot of the biggest rumors that were coming out of this movie, going like pretty much a year back, was that both Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield were supposedly going to be in this movie. And it was just a lot of back and forth from, like, Andrew Garfield constantly denying it. Tom Holland was constantly denying it. Like, a lot of the cast was just up in front, like, pretty much denying that they're gonna be in that movie. And of course, he has a bunch of leaks or rumors and everything, so never really had any big confirmation or anything, so it was really just kind of hoping they would be in there. And the logic is that given their villains, because these villains are from their universes, so it makes sense for the Spider-Man to be in there if their villains are in there. And sure enough, actually, both Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are, in fact, in Spider-Man No Way Home. Which they're in there for about probably the last 30 minutes of the movie. But it's just absolutely phenomenal. Like, their chemistry together is great. Especially between Tobey and Andrew. It's just great seeing them after just many years to them being off screen. Personally, my favorite is Tobey Maguire, so it was a lot of fun seeing him as Spider-Man again. But for the really, I mean, again, they were in there for 30 minutes or so. But of course, they did help really improve the movie. But overall, the story was just pretty excellent. But pretty much like it was a. It felt a lot like Spider-Man. More. It felt more like a Spider-Man movie than the last two, like Far From Home and Homecoming. Because really, you see Tom Holland's Peter really coming into the role as Spider-Man. It's really excellent. So when he traps all the villains in kind of this dungeon that Doctor Strange has, Doctor Strange wants them to pretty much be sent back, and then a lot of them actually are going to be killed when they get sent back. So Tom Holland's Peter is pretty much like, no, I don't want them to die. Let's kind of help them out, like kind of change who they are. And then there's this whole kind of fight between Doctor Strange and Spider-Man. And actually Spider-Man ends up winning due to the geometry, which is pretty hilarious. So you got that. And then, so Peter pretty much goes through the whole process of trying to really help out these villains to change them. And the first one he changes was actually Doc Ock. So if you call it Spider-Man 2, when he got the arms, he had this little chip in the back of his head that helps him keep control of the arms. But it got fried during kind of his experiment, and the arms started controlling him. That's why he became a villain. So Peter ends up repairing it, and Doc Ock goes back to his normal self, which is pretty cool. And then he had like an Electro, he had Sandman. Them two were pretty good as well. Sandman was never really a bad guy, but I really liked his role in this movie. Kind of just, he wanted to help, he wanted to do good things. You got Electro, who wanted like something else in life. He didn't want to really go back to being his former self, but he didn't want to continue to being a villain, I guess, because that's not really who he is ultimately. So Peter was trying to help him out. And then also, probably the guy who stole the show was, of course, Willem Dafoe, who played Osborn, aka Green Goblin. So when you first, really encounter him, he's Norman Osborn, who wants to just help. He wants to help out Peter and kind of helping these villains. But at some point, you see Green Goblin take control, and then he encourages the other villains to rebel against them, and then chaos ensues. It's this big fight between Green Goblin and Peter, Tom Holland's Peter, and then it goes to the point where, Aunt May's got Aunt May has this antidote that's supposed to cure Norman, but it doesn't work, and then he sends his glider to come in, and then it actually hits Aunt May. And then he drops a bomb and then flies off. So at first, you'd think May is okay. But as a few minutes go on, you see that she is not okay. She actually ends up dying. Which is pretty horrible. It's actually a pretty sad scene. And then this is where the other Spider-Man come in, kind of help in the process of curing these villains. And then there's this big epic battle between all of them. And all that. And then it eventually comes down into the big final fight between Tom Holland's Peter and Green Goblin. And it goes to the point where just Tom Holland's Peter just beating the crap out of him. And to the point where actually he picks up the glider and is about to kill him. But then Tobey Maguire's Peter comes out and stops him. Because, really Peter's not a killer. He's really not. And Tobey Maguire's Peter knows that he had to live with that guilt for the rest of his life. So he stops him from doing it. And then ultimately, Norman is cured. So Green Goblin is pretty much gone and Norman is back to normal. And then what happens then is that the multiverse really starts ripping apart due to the spell that was... Because what happened with the spell originally is that Doctor Strange had to, because it got out of control, Doctor Strange had to contain it in his box. And he had this So he had a container, but Green Goblin launched a bomb in it and then unleashed a spell. And so you start seeing kind of the sky rip open. You start seeing villains and people from different universes starting to come in. So Doctor Strange is trying his best to really fend them off. But the only way to fend it off is to really cast the spell again, but a different form. And so Tom Holland's Peter convinces him to cast a spell, not just to forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, but that everyone forgets who Peter is. It's as if he never existed. Which is pretty crazy. So he says goodbye to the other Spider-Man, also MJ and Ned, and then Doctor Strange casts a spell. And pretty much everybody, it's not that he doesn't exist anymore, but pretty much everybody is as if he doesn't exist. He's like, legally he does exist, but nobody knows him. And so it flash forwards into about Christmas time, always around there, and then he finally meets up with MJ again. But his intent was to go in and try to get to know her again and probably ask her out and get just reacquainted with everybody. But then he sees kind of the bruise that MJ got from the fight. And then he kind of just comes to the realization that them like being with him and then just kind of knowing that he's Spider-Man and everything is that he doesn't want them to be in danger anymore, so he actually just lets them go, pretty much, and just lets them live their lives. And then you kind of, in the final shot, you see pretty much him. He has his own apartment in New York City, and he has built his own suit with just a sewing kit now, and he's fancy tech and everything, which is pretty much just a sewing kit, which is classic Spider-Man. And then you just kind of see him just kind of swinging off, and that's pretty much the end of the movie. And so, I mean, overall, this movie is probably my favorite Spider-Man movie of all time. Even though Tobey Maguire is my favorite, it does beat those movies because it was so well done. And not only that, is that this movie really, it completes this trilogy from Homecoming to No Way Home. It really does complete it because really, this was his origin story into becoming Spider-Man, because at the end of this movie, he really steps into the role of being the Spider-Man we all know. Which is it's really cool. It's really cool to see, and I cannot wait until we see, what to do with this character, and it's kind of him being just the normal, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man that we all know, and just where his story goes from there, and whether he gets reacquainted with MJ and Ned. It's a lot of questions, but again, I really just like how they handled Tom Holland's Peter and everything. So I'm really excited to see where it goes from here. So again, it was probably definitely my favorite Spider-Man movie of all time. It's just absolutely fantastic, and again, it was absolutely great not only to see all these villains again, but also, of course, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, just seeing them again. I hope really they get their own movies. There's rumors about that. And especially Andrew Garfield. Andrew Garfield really did a fantastic job in his movie. He's underrated. He was really underrated in the Amazing Spider-Man movies, I think. So I hope he does get a chance to come back into the role and then probably have his own solo movie, because his trilogy is incomplete. The last movie ends off in a cliffhanger, so it needs to be completed and everything. So again, I really enjoy this movie, and I definitely, if you're a Spider-Man fan, go and see it. Because even if you're not going to see it, because it's really excellent movie, and I mean, really, if you look at the box office, it has just domestically has probably like over $250 million in the box office. And just worldwide, it's like over like 530 million. And that's just the opening weekend. That is pretty impressive right there. Really, really impressive. And it tells you that if you don't make a movie woke, people actually will like it. Because there's nothing really woke about this movie at all. That's what makes it even more better. There's no woke messaging or anything. It's just a movie for the fans. That's pretty much all it is. And I'm all here for it. So definitely go see it again. And I highly, highly recommend it. And I give this movie probably like a 10 out of 10 rating. It's that good. And so, that's the end really for this review right here. So I hope you all kind of enjoyed it. So, sorry about that. So, be on the lookout. So I'm going to be releasing this episode today as I record it, hopefully. But also be on the lookout for another kind of special episode, which will be the Christmas episode. So I'm actually recording it right after this one. But that episode will be released on Christmas Day. So, yeah, definitely tune in for that. Otherwise, y'all have a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And I'll see y'all back in 2022. My name is Sean Clinton, and this is God of Freedom Show. If you enjoy this episode of the God of Freedom Show, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Remember, you can find the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. This episode is brought to you by Anchor. Thank you for listening and watching, and as always, all glory to be to God.